Welcome back for another edition of The Road to 100, our narrative series here with Black AI Media. I'm Cedric Scott Jr., your host, and I'm joined with, and I mean, it's definitely a heartfelt situation whenever I could talk to fellow educators,
Right.
within the space and talk about what we're doing. So I've Husan Thompson with me today, and we're going to get into his background, talk about the things that he's doing within the space of tech and including AI. But I want to open it up really quick, Hassan, first and say thank you for joining me, brother. I appreciate you. And give us a little bit of an introduction, background, who you are and what you do.
Sure. So Husan Thompson, I've been a lifelong educator. Was my first career out of college, and I've been front facing with students for about a generation. So my former students could have kids that would be my students. I've had the great pleasure to teach in several states across the country, including Louisiana, Maryland, Virginia, Georgia, and California. I have taught all up and down the science department, non calculus physics, chemistry, biology, various levels of leadership. I've never gone into admin, but I have been department chair, coach, counselor, and the whole bit. So I've got a big, broad experience in education from special ed, suburban schools all the way to very deeply urban schools with students who are far below basic and several grades behind. So I've seen the full spectrum and have transitioned to taking that wealth of knowledge and leveraging it to help the next generation of educators and to make my impact on the field itself, because I do think that it's struggling and I've been party to that. So now I have a level of accountability to speak truth to power and to do what I can to help improve the system, because I've got a lot on the line. I've got an 8-year-old son, and if I look at the statistics, the data doesn't look good for him. In some areas, he's got a 90% chance to be below reading level by the time he gets to 12th grade. So no matter how much skill set I've got as a professional educator, I've got a whole world to combat. So rather than just worry about me and my home, I'm interested in making a bigger impact on the field itself. And so that's a little bit about me and what drives my passion.
We connect on a lot of different points, being fathers, being educators, husbands, all those pieces.
Right.
And with that in mind, as we're talking about now in this context of this conversation, thinking about technology, AI, which is we know is driving into the future, considering our little ones and youth at large and just the world. Our primary question here that I want to ask you is, what does narrative mean to you?
Hmm. When I think of narrative, the first thing that comes up for me is the term griot or griot, depending on where you're from, Griot. It is a term that is used to identify the storyteller of a community. And it could be more than just a storyteller. It is the historian, the keeper of records, the genealogist before these cool bottles that you could spit in and get your DNA. Right? These were the keepers of the history of the story. And in our tradition, an oral tradition is a critical part of how we understand culture and how we understand the world. So when I think of the term narrative, I think, who's telling our story? Who's got custody over the not only the history, but that history then projects out to what's possible in the future. And so for me, having access to that narrative, understanding what is the source of that narrative, and making sure that that tradition continues, it grounds us in a historical context. So for me, transitioning from a boy into a man, and now I'm quickly moving into the elder class, bro. I feel some type of way about that, but it does light the level of accountability and responsibility that I have in terms of being a part of what is that narrative, who's responsible for it. And I'm in a position to take at least my portion of responsibility and make sure that we honor that tradition. So that's what comes up for me.
Yeah, some amazing points related to just consideration for generations, right, across age brackets and groups, which is definitely important and imperative for us to lean into.
Mhm.
And with that in mind, I wanted to kind of position this and think, because I know you're background, similar to mine, was originally in science, but here we are talking about tech and AI related to the work that we're doing. So, can you tell us about your journey as it pertains to going into more the technological AI based space?
Mhm.
How did you get started? Did you tinker with some of the tools and that type of thing? And what led you to kind of where you are today and how you're actually using this technology?
Okay. Well, put your seatbelt on. um, when I think about my journey specifically related to the issue of tech, it probably starts. I mean, I've always been into technology just because of the field that we're in, right? So it's hard to divorce the science from the technology, from the engineering, from the mathematics. So it's been something that I've been connected to since I was a child, playing in my grandmother's garden, watching tomato flowers turn into fruits and, digging up worms and things. But moving into the heart of your question, I probably got professionally serious about leveraging technology more broadly during the pandemic. When we all went home, I realized very quickly that school from home meant that now the quality of our education and our capacity to educate our students was in direct competition to Fortnite and Roblox and PlayStation. And if a child has the option to choose between picking their favorite avatar on Fortnite or listening to Miss Jones, who can't quite use the mute button properly and doesn't know where the cameras and the files are, we're going to lose every time. And so I had to really figure out, what can I do from a digital space that could create a compelling experience for the students, such that they would still want to be engaged in my class, rather than put me on mute and mute their video and then go do whatever, just to get credit for the course. So that's when it really started to highlight for me just how far behind we were. And if the best of technology was using Google Classroom and Zoom as the core combination, then I knew that we were fighting a losing battle. Moving forward from there, I started into the tinkering journey. And so it became a lot about, okay, well, what are all the features of Google and how can I integrate them? Then came OpenAI. And you want to talk about a game changer. I mean, OpenAI took the concept of search and customized it in such a way that any person could ask any question and actually get an answer to that question, rather than a series of ranked pages where they would then continue to do their own research. So when I think about the implications of what a student could do with a powerful tool like that, which can search the entire internet based on a prompt and synthesize a response to that prompt, which is, 80% or so well done. Given my experience in the minds of young people, oh man, changed the game. But when I started to trumpet this new tool to my fellow educators, and in particular to my administrators, it wasn't as well received as I thought. And that's when I started to realize that there is no success without successors. And if our current administrators and leaders in education are so stuck in the way things were and trying to mold the technology to fit into an old way of doing education, then I knew we had no future. And so I then started to move out on my own. I knew that my impact had to go beyond just the classroom and those 30 students that I have for that 90-minute block. And I started to realize that rather than a 30 to 1, I could have a 1 to 1, like this conversation, multiplied by 1,000. And so an individual teacher who understands how to use the technology properly can leverage it in such a way that they're not stretched nearly as thin, that they could use the technology to create a compelling experience where the students get a chance to navigate the World Wide Web. They can use their levels of inquiry to answer questions that are actually interesting to them. And the teacher could do it from the comfort of their own home. Oh man, sign me up.
Thinking about that trajectory and pathway of working in schools and then stepping out and kind of doing your own thing independently, realizing how we can utilize some of these tools, the technology, AI. I want to talk a little bit about the Educator's House and what that means to you, that initiative, that that push. Can you give us a little bit of backstory on that particular initiative, what your hopes are for it, and how did it come to life?
The dawn of the Educator's House is very connected to my own personal history. So the original version, if all right, we're gonna go there, huh, Cedric? Okay.
Let's do it.
The original version of Educator's House was called Brain Power. And the concept behind Brain Power was really leveraging my passion for the students. And so I started this as a after school program for students who did not have reasonable access to university life and university experience. So in that those first couple of years, we did things like college tours. We would do I don't know if you remember, and I can't think of the term right now, but there was a museum experience back in those days where they would do these really interesting artistic anatomical positions of all sorts of different things, human bodies, animals, the whole bit. I forget what it was called, but we took a trip out there, you know, so we would be chartering buses and just giving students that beyond the classroom experience. Then I started working at Loyola Marymount University and was serving at the university level, and that then gave me a bit of access to then start bringing middle school and high school students onto the campus for campus tours. And because of my position, I had access to dean levels, chairmen, all kinds of very powerful and interesting people. So then the students started to get access to them. So at that time, Brain Power was very much a student facing, student servicing sort of operation. And if I fast forward to post pandemic, and I was faced with a decision point, and due to both professional and personal reasons, it just made sense for me to leave the school that I was at. But after 20 plus years in the classroom, I really had to ask myself, do I want to drive this train towards retirement and potentially become that old fogey teacher that doesn't understand the young folks and all this hibbity toilet Sigma, Ohio language that they're talking about? Is it time to go beyond the classroom? And so during the pandemic, I got interested in Clubhouse, as many of our educators did. And when I left the classroom, I went back to Clubhouse. And it was at that time that a friend of mine named Courtney Savoy Harper had a very popular brand called Educators. And the way that it was organized, they were called houses. And so this house called Educators, I just started working with her, and she gave me access and the freedom to start demonstrating leadership in that space. And I started taking it and running. And what I found was there is a thirst among educators to actually engage in real professional development. When I think about professional development in the typical sense, and I think many educators can resonate with this, it's either something that should have been sent to me in an email.
Hmm.
We don't need to spend 45 minutes talking about something that, you can just push out to me and I can just get it and keep it moving. Or the other experience that I've had a lot of times is some sort of third party outsourcing. And so the school, rather than looking at the internal intelligence and brilliance among their own staff, would send that professional development responsibility out to some third party. And then that third party, let's say Middle America or somebody with a great PhD in this, that, or the other, would then deliver all of this best practice information. But then it's up to me to translate that information to my particular student population. So now I still have to do the heavy lift. So when we started having these conversations, and we're talking about critical conversations, conversations like technology in education, the use of cameras in the classroom. We talk about things like violence. There's been a serious uptick of teachers facing their own violence, let alone student to student violence. These were not the high level kinds of conversations, the critical conversations that were happening down at the level of the school site. And so the teachers started to flock, and they started to be committed to this experience where they finally had voice and could actually speak to the issues, the underlying issues that they were genuinely facing. And so at the time, because I had just decided to leave the classroom permanently, this was sort of my service to the community. And this was my own way of, let's say, psychologically coping with this transition in my career trajectory. So I just wanted to stay in the field. And after, the first season of this is when I realized, like, oh, wait a minute, maybe there's a market for this. And
Wait, don't go anywhere. If you're loving this conversation, we've got so much more waiting for you at blackaimedia.com. That's right, you can catch the full interview with even more insights, stories, and perspectives from our guest. At Black AI Media, we're all about celebrating the innovators, disruptors, and visionaries from the Black global community who are shaping the future of tech and AI. We're talking game-changing ideas, powerful voices, and exclusive content you won't find anywhere else. So, if you're ready to keep the inspiration flowing and dive deeper, head over to blackaimedia.com right now. Don't miss out on the full experience. We'll see you there.